Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, where we discuss the latest DevOps news, AWS announcements, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's August 20th, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse sells AWS reference architectures that get you production in just 2 weeks. So if you're curious to learn more about that, just go to cloudposse.com. So how can you maximize today's session? Well, first off, our format's informal. You can engage as much as you'd like and ask questions. And if you're curious about any of our open source tools like Atmos, this is a great place to ask. For those on the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. Just join us live by going to cloudposse.com/office hours, cloudposse.com/office hours. Just enter in your email and you'll get an invite. Not right away, actually, within the first 24 hours or so. So I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's office hours valuable, share it with your team. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, that's youtube.com/cloudposse. And we'll be posting a recording of this there in just a few hours. So let's get started with the discussion of this week's current events. First, I don't know, maybe DEFCON was pretty mild this year or something. I did see a lot of complaints that it was just too crowded, and it has been getting more and more crowded the times that I've gone. But I don't know. Very few articles caught my attention in the news cycle. Maybe I should go direct to the source. One of them was this, though. They demonstrated on stage, or they demonstrated or walked through a attack where they were able to coerce Microsoft's Copilot Studio, which is like a commercial offering of Copilot that enterprises can use. You can link it up with your Salesforce and other systems, and they were able to coerce it to give it information they weren't supposed to see, all the financial details of customers and things like that coming from the Salesforce CRM. This is just, these kinds of announcements, and I have actually, it's not totally related, but I have some other related ones coming up as well. Are just becoming more and more common because the science of keeping this stuff secure hasn't caught up with the advancements of what you can do with AI. So Microsoft apparently fixed this promptly after being privately notified, and then following responsible disclosure, they came out with this, I guess, at DEFCON. Any further insights on this one? All right. Next one was just, I thought it was interesting, a summary for, maybe people less accustomed to using AI prompts and so forth, and how easily they can be polluted. And this talks about how, when you share a link to some document somewhere or some URL somewhere, that can have instructions on there you're not even aware of. And that can affect everything else in your conversation because that gets added to the context. And the AI model doesn't put a different weight or different priority on that context that came from somewhere else. It doesn't know the intent of what polluted that context. This shows a practical example of how that your answers can just suddenly start coming off totally random based on how the context was polluted. This is, of course, why the trust me mode is so dangerous, because it can get a wild idea that deleting the database or deleting your past 10 years of code or AWS infrastructure, whatever, is a good idea. So don't trust AI. Anyways, that's probably beating, what's the expression? Beating a drum that everyone's heard a lot about too much lately. I stumbled across this repository, which I thought was notable for the reason that I had no idea how many system prompt leaks there have been. You hear about system prompt leak here and there. Well, here's a whole archive of all the system prompts that have been leaked and collected now on GitHub. And it's so remarkable how, these presumably like billion-dollar investments in products, or at least million-dollar investments in products, are ultimately boiled down to a really smart prompt that somebody's iterated on. And funny because it's so different from all forms of software development before, where you actually had imperative code describing how it should work, and sometimes, if you're lucky, some declarative ways of configuring it. Now it's just yeah. Is there a term for that? Like, so, you have imperative code, which is, exactly what you're doing. Declarative way is presenting it in a way that it's more intuitive. And then what would you call, prompts? Prompt code? I guess that's best I can do. All right, next announcement. So we talked about Kiro. What was it? About a month ago or so it was announced. And this is Amazon's own fork of VS Code, implementing agentic programming vis-a-vis like things like Cursor or Windsurf that you've heard about. And Kiro pricing for it wasn't available when it came out, and you couldn't even pay any amount to get more credits. You were kind of limited. So I'd heard really good things from Matt Calhoun on our team, who mentioned very positive feedback in his experiments using Kiro. What he liked about it was how it came up with the plan, came up with the task list of things it was going to do before executing it, and it was just very clear what was going on through the process. But the problem was you'd burn through the available credits too quickly. Well, the announcement here is on the pricing, and I don't know if you guys have seen the other talk on how much money companies like Cursor, I believe, are losing on their solutions. I forget the number. Don't quote me on this number. It was something like they make 10 cents for every dollar they spend, or something crazy like that. So this is Amazon being Amazon, and they never make 10 cents on every dollar they spend. It's quite the opposite for Amazon, and I think that's what this pricing probably is telling us, that this is what they figured out. That said, we've all been accustomed to spending a whole lot less. When one of the people they interviewed here were saying they would expect to be spending about 500 a month for part-time use, and about 1950 per month for full-time use, based on the number of interactions he would expect to have. And that to me makes sense. 1,000 interactions, 3,000 interactions, that's not that much, it would be my guess. Now, I haven't looked at my stats in Cursor or anything lately, but I bet I go through that pretty quick. Anyone kick the tires on Kiro or Kiro and have some input?
I don't know if you can hear me if I'm coming through, but I did try to get on Kiro. I got stuck on the wait list. And then when I saw the pricing, I bailed immediately because I use it too much to be spending 1,200, 1,500 bucks a month. Or when I say it, I use Cursor too much. I'm paying 20 bucks a month for Cursor to give me great results. I'm not gonna leave my agentic IDE for like a spec-driven IDE, which sounds really, really cool. And I think, it'd be very applicable to the work that I'm doing, but I'm not willing to spend 1,500 bucks to 2K a month to get that sort of benefit from my IDE.
Yeah, and I saw somebody. This is well, I don't want to break the train of thought, but I saw some workflows that seemed like they could apply to Cursor and trying to achieve similar outcomes. I wonder. I wonder if this is. Does anybody know if this is something that might be coming to Cursor more formally? All right. Then next announcement would be, yeah, so this one hit close to home. This, I don't know if this came out during DEF CON or not. I didn't see any. Oh, it came out during Black Hat, which usually coincides with DEF CON. So that's why now. So back in January, researchers discovered a pretty awful attack vector on um, CodeRabbit. If you're not familiar with CodeRabbit is, they're one of the best AI-driven automated PR code review tools out there. It's free for open source projects. And what sets it apart from some of the other ones is that they run a lot of tools to try and get other data out of your pull request to determine, to identify best practices, possible bugs, possible misconfigurations, and then explains it in a very clear way and provides even AI prompt instructions that you can copy and paste back into your editor to have it fix the recommendations for you and so forth. We've been running it at Cloud Posse, to be honest, for the past year or so, and it's really alleviated the burden on PR contributors for certain projects where we have it. So what these researchers discovered was that one of those tools that it runs, in this case, is Rubocop, which is a one of the linting tools for Ruby projects. Rubocop supports a plugin system, if you will, and you could specify other Ruby scripts that it would run. Ordinarily, this wouldn't be too much of a concern. Like, let's say you were running Rubocop in your own repo with GitHub Actions. Pull requests already have a very secure context that they operate in with no secrets and no GitHub credentials other than those issued from your own identity or your own actor on GitHub. So it's safe in that way. You don't have access to repository secrets and so forth. But this is a problem with GitHub apps that are not properly designed with security in mind. And I bring this up more generally because I'm afraid that a lot of GitHub apps are implemented just the way that they did with CodeRabbit. So here's the issue, or this is how the attack worked. So anybody who can open a pull request against a repository where CodeRabbit was installed could, in that pull request, add a malicious extension here. And here's an example that they have that would exfiltrate the context out of the machine, specifically all the environment variables. Well, the way CodeRabbit was working was they had a single process, or single process is, the idea is that they weren't, it'll make more sense. Let me continue my story. They had basically a process that had its app secret, app private key, app ID, all that required to do a token exchange with GitHub to get a token for that particular repository that they're working on. And when they were running the code associated with a pull request, they weren't running it in a secure context, just like I was talking about GitHub Actions, how GitHub Actions normally works with no access to secrets and so forth. So in that context that they were running the process, that process had access to their application secret and their application's ID, so they could exchange that for a token on any repository that GitHub app had been installed on. So the good news is that CodeRabbit fixed this problem quickly after being notified. It sounded like it was reported at the end of January this year, and it was fixed, I think, by the beginning of February. but there's a lot of there's a bad taste in people's mouths because that means that nobody found out about this until 6 months later. And that's an eternity when you're generating a lot of log events or storing those off in Glacier or from an audit perspective, or like your obligation to report this if you're a regulated company and you have CodeRabbit installed, this was a potential vulnerability that you were subject to. So obviously these kinds of attacks are not that bad in the sense if you have branch protections, protecting main, there's only so much that can do by gaining access to those credentials. But it also leaked private repository. It could have given you access to private repositories. That means intellectual property and so forth, which could have leaked from it. Anyways, I haven't read to see if there was any fallout for this or known attacks or people exploiting this. And it could be mentioned in the article, but thought it was an interesting read. Anybody have more thoughts on this one? Yeah, here's an example of what they were able to exfiltrate. Obviously with values censored here. All right, next announcement. So yeah, CodeRabbit responded to that, but incidentally, the same day this was disclosed, and that's what people were not so happy about. Another interesting, totally unrelated topic was the external secrets project. So if you're using Kubernetes, chances are you're using external secrets. Like if you want to source your secrets from SSM, ASM, or any of like the plethora of backends supported by external secrets, this is the tool for you. It's really awesome. We use it too. I was really surprised to see this issue posted, which was first posted that, hey, heads up, we've decided to stop more releases until we get more maintainers on the team here. This is one of those, everyone's seen that meme kind of where, the whole internet depends on this one piece of software supported by one guy in Nebraska kind of situation. Well, turns out this call for help, this plea for help worked. And a bunch of people have spoken up and offered their support, for the project from a development perspective and so forth. So we'll see where that goes. This was open 3 weeks ago, and I forget when this was updated. So it ain't dead yet. All right, so you guys will probably remember that story about the 16 billion passwords that were leaked. Well, Troy Hunt confirms that, yeah, that was just trolling. And his thing or his argument is basically that in order to break into the news cycle, you need a bigger and even bigger and even bigger number of passwords that were leaked. And it turns out that this was really just a collection of a lot of past data leaks, and there was almost total overlap with what they already had in the database for Have I Been Pwned. So the big hoop to do about nothing. Also, I think that was the conclusion that a lot of other news agencies came to. So there was a attack against the GitHub Action, I don't know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, time goes so fast, I don't know, 6 months ago. TJ Files affected, or TJ Actions was the organization, and the GitHub Action was like affected files or something like that. And this was a really scary incident that the GitHub Action was compromised. Somebody quickly detected it, but this is used in just all over the place in open source projects and probably private repositories as well. The good thing about this is if you were pinning to a SHA, you probably were not affected by this unless you happened to pin at that precise moment that they had the vulnerable commit in there. Well, one of the best practices for GitHub Actions has been for a while to pin to SHAs, and there are a lot of tools out there that help make that easier. I know there's one that we've used. I'll look it up. But what's nice about this update is GitHub now supports a security setting that you can enable to require actions to be pinned to a full-length commit SHA. So as an enterprise, that's probably not a bad idea to reduce the attack vector of supply chain attacks against GitHub Actions. Now, what's interesting is this combined with the cooldown period for Dependabot, Dependabot being the other project by GitHub that was acquired a long, long time ago for automatically updating your GitHub Actions. And Dependabot supports commit SHA pinning. So in Dependabot, you can now have a cooldown. We talked about this last week. And this is a minimum age of a package. So again, security is all about the defense in depth, right? Lots of little things get you more secure. You never have absolute security. So with a cooldown, you can say that, yes, we want to update as soon as the new release is available, but let's wait 2 weeks at least. That'll let everyone else find out before I do that this has a supply chain attack, right? But that's only as good as the project. That's only as good as the community is in finding those things. And it's worked pretty well, but it's not a fail-safe. Anyways, that combined with commit SHA pinning, combined with setting that flag in your for your GitHub organization to require GitHub Actions to be pinned to a specific SHA in your workflows. I think that's a good recipe for greater security. Also, GitHub should be adding support for marketplace actions to be delivered as OCI images. And that'll also as immutable OCI images, and that's also going to help with these issues. So a given version can't be overridden. All right, any more thoughts on this one? All right, next announcement. Yeah, so here's a Cloud Posse announcement. We released this a few weeks ago. I think I forgot to bring it up, so I wanted to make sure to do that on the call today. So there are a lot of modules out there for using for automating GitHub with code. We implemented our own. They have full Terra test support, so we are testing it. And we also implemented a root module, a component for managing GitHub repositories. And this is a really nice solution that overcomes the implementation problem that we've seen with most other implementations out there. So here's the deal. And it's funny because I was just speaking to a customer yesterday, and they were saying how their own in-house solution just stopped working because they're doing exactly the thing that most people do. If you create a factory inside of a Terraform root module, a factory is a pattern where you kind of have a declarative configuration, and then you iterate over all of those configs, and you provision it all within a single invocation of a root module. You will, at some point, hit a tipping point. It's always when you can't afford to have it. So it's either going to be you run out of memory, it's going to be that you hit rate limits of the underlying provider, and Terraform itself gets really unhappy when it hits rate limits, and things get unpredictable. So that's what was happening in their implementation. It just stopped working because they hit some tipping point with rate limits on the GitHub API, and the only way to get around that is to split it up. Well, what if instead you took a different approach where every repository is its own state, is its own instance of the module, and that's how we do it. So in this case, this is managed with Atmos. You're looking at an Atmos configuration. Here's, for example, the repository name, whether you've enabled this configuration or not, the organization that this repository lives in, the basic repository settings, the teams, variables, secrets, etc. It supports everything available through the GitHub provider, which is pretty much everything that the underlying GitHub API supports. In our implementation, and the reason why our implementation has AWS in here, is that we are using the AWS provider to source secrets from ASM or SSM, which is convenient when you have hundreds of repositories, each with dozens of environments that need the same secret duplicated into each one of those environments or some subset of those environments. And where's the source of truth for that secret? Rather than having that be in GitHub, we are just in this solution using SSM or ASM as that source of truth. So we have some examples of the configuration here. And one of the reasons, so in this case, we're showing you kind of how you might organize it in terms of Atmos, right? So you'd have your organization, so like your GitHub organization, let's say our GitHub organization is Cloud Posse, and then you can have how you break this down is up to you because it's just Atmos stack configuration. And each one of these components is an instance of this, and it works really well with imports and inheritance. So you get dry configuration, critical for enterprise scale organizational management of GitHub. And let's see if we have an example of here using YAML anchors as well. Yeah, so and here's an example of how you can manage the amount of configuration associated with a repository these days in a sane way. So for example, managing your environments, managing your rule sets, you can give your rule sets names like, your default branch, your branch protections, and then everything required for branch protection in one file. So you don't have to have an overwhelmingly large configuration with every possible value that you got to manage in one place. And that's what's nice, I think, really nice about our implementation is how we thought about it in a way that was very optimized when you also use a framework like Atmos. So let's see. Dan, are you here? Saw you here a little while
Yes,
ago.
I'm here.
I thought when I was reviewing the pull request, I thought I saw an example where we were using anchors for some drying some things up.
Yeah, take a look at the app or the environment. We use that for a customer because they have over a dozen environments. But in this use case, I don't think
Oh, here
yeah,
it
here's
is.
one.
Cool. Yeah. And then here's an example where you might have, a lot of environments. I think the customer we're thinking of has like 12 or something environments. And that can also get pretty repetitive if you're defining them like this. So here's just a great example of leveraging YAML anchors to dry up that configuration within here. So define, declaratively describe the attributes of a non-prod environment, do the same for prod, and then dereference that for each place you want to use it. All right. One of the reasons I bring this up is if you've been curious about Atmos and using it somehow, but you have a lot of Terraform, maybe you're using other tooling, switching to a new framework sounds like a big task. This could be a isolated use case for using it just to learn the power and fall in love with Atmos, because after you do this, you'll learn a lot, you'll see a lot, and it's really hard to going back doing Terraform the old-fashioned way. I promise you that. All right. Any questions before we move on to the next announcement?
Yeah, just want to quickly add, I tried the factory approach that that falls over after like 50 repos or 10 users. And then when you onboard someone new or want to give them permissions with the factory approach, you're
Yeah.
waiting like 20 minutes to make a small change. So
Yeah.
didn't think about doing everything as an individual state file. Obviously, what you folks at Publisher is pretty slick, and still leveraging Terraform. We found I think you had shared a couple of other options that were like JavaScript based or webhook based. All of them fall over at scale because of rate
Really?
limits and stuff like that. And we came across one called GitHub Org Manager made by, I think, some railway
Okay.
organization in the UK. And it only does the basics like team management. And then we've been doing a factory still on the Terraform. We just kind of split it up.
Hodgepodged it together. So now you don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
this should work well. And I mean, there is still, okay, so there are other considerations. So if you're running in GitHub Actions, we have GitHub Actions for Atmos for these things. And one of the things you can do is run it in a matrix. So every one of those repositories that's affected is planned and applied in a separate job. Each job has its own GitHub token with its own rate limits. So that gets around the rate limit issues. And then also, but then there's another limit, which is that GitHub itself, matrices are limited to 250 jobs. So if you modify more than 250 jobs within a pull request, such as affect a global like setting inherited by every single repository, you could have a problem. We don't have the magic bullet for that right now from a GitHub Actions perspective, but that wouldn't be a limitation if you're using a forthcoming product that we have. I'm not going to waste the announcement here, but we're working on something that eliminates the problems of large batch job processing inside of GitHub and GitHub Actions through workflow dispatches.
Cool. Yeah, we are once we shifted over towards this Python app that does the team user management, that's like per organization. We have been doing the matrix job, and I didn't realize there was a limit. I thought it was a concurrency limit. I didn't realize there was a matrix limit. So it's a hard limit. It doesn't just queue it up.
You cannot have more than 250 jobs. Yeah, I believe.
Oh, so it just fails essentially, or
yeah, but there's a workaround.
okay.
Yeah,
I'll
so
hold on for the workaround. I don't have to share now, but I'll.
Are you familiar with the workaround?
We're only at like 20 jobs, so I can I'll let you folks solve it and just copy and paste. But yeah.
Well, we ran into this a long time ago. So we wrote a GitHub action called Matrix Extended. And basically the idea is you do a workflow. You can have a shared workflow. You can have a workflow that calls a shared workflow. And the shared workflow can have another 250 jobs. So that gets you, pretty good. But still under the limits of what enterprises have in terms of the number of repositories. So it's still a problem.
Yeah, we're still under 100 per org, but yeah, and I assume all of everything that's repository specific is within one state file, right? That's one run. It's not further broken out by user.
Yeah, it's not further broken out. Yeah, that was the opinionated choice that I think there's like 3 or 4 or 5 different resources for managing a GitHub repository. We tied those into one module that is called by the root module, and it's 1-to-1 state per repository.
How have you been handling? Are you guys using roles, or are you guys using the admin push pull permissions for a repository?
So in order for an app like this to work, you have to create a GitHub app in God mode.
Oh, yep. Oh, sorry. What I was referring to is when your team needs to troubleshoot something that needs admin level privileges, like org level or similar. How are you generally managing that escalation?
Oh, we don't have a solution for
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
Like a just-in-time privilege escalation with expiration would be nice.
Yeah, I haven't found anything cost effective. There's like something you get if you do an enterprise deal, and I think Tenable might offer something there.
Okay, I mean they have this for like AWS, I think. Granted,
But if someone on your team needs extra access, I assume it's a manual provision, and then you kind of de-escalate.
Yeah, so we have no, I mean, in that situation, yeah, sorry, I didn't really read between the lines here. So in that situation, what we would use is Cloud Posse Sandbox, which is a different GitHub org under the enterprise, where everyone gets admin access if they want it. So
Got it. Cool.
Totally safe to do whatever you want and test apps out or things like this.
Okay, got it. Cool, that makes sense.
And like this GitHub action that this Terraform module has automated test, but obviously we're not testing that against Cloud Posse. We're our parent GitHub org. We have a Cloud Posse tests GitHub organization where it's the wild, wild west and anything can go on here.
Got it. So if someone needs to test a new rule set, they could basically update the Terraform for the test organization, try things out there, and then roll it out to your main prod.
Yeah, that's basically how it would work. Yeah.
Got it. That makes sense. Cool. Thanks for that, sharing that workflow.
Yeah, for sure. And last little announcement was just something I got this morning. Amazon has announced the support for customizable dashboards now on the billing page. So this is nice if there's specific numbers you're looking at and want to make the team kind of follow along with to keep the costs under control. And that's it. Any other interesting announcements today? Checking the chat here. So Sergey was saying there's a new, is it hallucination? Or I don't know this word, hallucion. I'm guessing it's hallucination. On Sonnet 4 called StackPack. Yeah, do you want to talk about, is there somebody here from StackPack that wants to talk about StackPack? Going once, going twice. All right. I met with some people from StackPack this week. They have an open source project that they're working on. It's pretty interesting. It is like, it's somewhere like if Warp Dev meets like DevOps engineer with playbooks in every major vertical of DevOps expertise, and it's able to have team knowledge, just kind of like what you have with warp.dev, and these can be hosted. Plus, it has an interesting concept of a shared context. So imagine if, as a team, you're working through different parts of your infrastructure, what we would maybe call components. It can have a shared memory of things that have happened to those components. So when you're when you're talking with the agent, it has that context and is aware of it. So yeah, check out StackPack, and we'll talk more about it maybe on another office hours. All right. This is that part of the hour where we go to Michael Jenkins. Are you still here? You had to leave early today? Oh, we missed the Michael Jenkins hour. All right. My other go-to is Rishav. What's interesting?
Hello. Oh, my camera's not doing its thing. I've not got anything too crazy this time around, I have to say. But I mean, of all things, the IaCConf. I'll get to speak there. So that's pretty neat.
Oh, are you talking at IaCConf?
I am, yeah.
Oh, cool. Share a link to you, or do you have what are you talking about? Do you have any more information?
I do, yeah. It's already posted on LinkedIn just a couple of days back. I'll find a link for it. Oh man, I'm not doing a good job promoting it, but they did mention it's to do with provisioning security in your infrastructure as code pipelines. So really, it's not going to be anything crazy, but talking about the bare bones, things like OIDC, making sure you have short-lived credentials, things like if you're planning and applying try to apply your plan file. Don't just apply with auto-approve.
Remind me when it's happening again?
It's on the 27th of August. Here, I'll pull
27th
it
of
up.
August. All right, interesting.
Oh, there we go. Events, IaC Spotlight. And I'll go ahead and copy paste the link into our chat. And for what it's worth, the two speakers ahead of me, they've got way more interesting things to talk about. So at least it's worth coming in for them.
All right, well, thank you for sharing that.
No worries. Especially for what it's worth, it's the second one by a certain Prabesh. He's talking about vetted modules and effectively how he's made a lot of these custom wrappers around existing modules to make them more user-friendly for his internal team. And I can't help but think that's kind of a bit like Atmos, surely, except you're not wrapping things. That's you can just take it as is. You can pin it, you can modulate, you can reuse it however you want.
All right. Thanks for sharing. All right, let's see what else. Are there just 4 tracks?
Oh no, so it's all three are going to happen one after another.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, but the agenda, are these the only ones so far?
Oh, that's exactly it. Yeah, they just have the 3 for that day. So I think it's happening over lunchtime or so.
Got it. All
I think
right.
you mentioned this a while back where the IaCConf, they're keeping it pretty light, it seems. Like every quarter there's one of these conferences and it's fairly streamlined, lightweight.
Yeah, makes sense. It's a good strategy, but well played, Space Left. Good strategy. All right. Cool. Well, any questions we can get answered today?
Only vaguely related to DevOps, but earlier on you mentioned using YAML anchors. That's something that's given us a lot of headaches, just setting that up internally. When it works, it's a dream. It's beautiful. You have variables effectively. How have you been finding it? Do you use a certain YAML parser? Is it just built in with GitHub?
Well, so GitHub sadly does not support it in GitHub Actions. It would be really nice.
That's right. Yeah.
I believe GitLab Pipelines uses it as a first class best practice.
Yep.
We use it also a ton in like how we manage our mergify configuration. Like this mergify configuration would have been unwieldy if we weren't using YAML anchors. So in this case, it's a convention. You use this shared key. None of these things are actually mean anything in this context. And then you give them a name and the rules here, and then you can dereference those down below, and your configurations are suddenly totally human readable. And that's what I really like about it. So is it the default branch? Is it open? And then you can reuse that logic everywhere, all over the place. And that's been effective for us. We rely on it a lot less in Atmos because Atmos has a lot of native capabilities through just its imports functionality, its inheritance capabilities, multiple inheritance, as well as Go template variable interpolation. But this is still a nice to have. Also, YAML anchors don't make sense outside of the current file's context.
Right.
There's no way of really doing cross-file YAML anchors.
It only has a local scope as opposed to like a global scope.
Yeah, but Atmos, for example, has a bang include of a YAML function, and this gives you the best of both. You can include any other file here, and it gets injected in the DOM, and you can also select some subpath of that using a YQ expression. So it's like giving YAML anchors steroids using this YAML function we implemented in Atmos.
That's wildly okay. Well, yeah. I just came to realize that YQ so powerful, and it's effectively a one-to-one with JQ as well. The amount of crazy things you can get to it.
Yeah, still working on getting you one day over to Atmos.
But what, I did have one more question. This is a GitHub Action one. Yeah, you probably have more experience in this. But you know how you can have matrices in GitHub Actions? And I recently heard that you can have nested matrices, so you can have like an object,
Yeah.
and effectively you can pass in like a JSON. Is that something you happen to have experience with or have done?
Yeah, actually, it incidentally, it doesn't come up often, but it just came up when we were talking about managing the GitHub repos.
Ah,
So we've worked with that extensively in some, and we created this GitHub action called GitHub Action Matrix Extended, which
uh-huh.
when we need to slice let's say you computed a matrix and it
Yeah.
resulted in 500 jobs. Well, you can use this action to split it up so that you have a matrix, so that you have a matrix of matrices that you can then
Right.
dispatch to, not dispatch, that you can call a shared workflow with,
Mhm.
and so forth. It's good and bad. These promises here are not actually supported by the GitHub UI.
Oh no.
So you can do this to overcome the job limit, and I think we say 256, but I'm not sure if it's 256 or 250. I think it might be 250. Anyways, if you get more than 500 jobs, the UI falls over. Like
I
the
can
UI
imagine.
does not load. It just like GitHub hangs. And do you want to kill this app message? So
Gotcha. And that's the format, is it? So you have to do JSON and then include. That's how it gets passed in.
well, yes, yeah, exactly. That is how we have implemented it at least. I believe,
Gotcha.
yeah. We have I don't know if we have an example anymore where there's clearly an example in this repo,
Mhm.
probably where we test it. So here you can, if you want, if it's at all interested, you can see how.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
This became a issue for us very quickly with drift detection and Terraform and GitHub Actions because you want to finish today sometime, right?
Mhm.
So it's natural that you would run a Terraform plan against every component or a state that you have. But when, very frequently customers have over 1,000 deployed root modules, and then you have a problem. So this is how we got around some of those things.
Gotcha. Right. Another curiosity, with dog breeding and such, we looked at the GitHub repository Cloud Posse model today. Surely you're not using that for yourself, are you?
Oh, I couldn't hear what you say that.
Oh,
The audio is a little bit muffled today.
oh yeah, no, it's my bad. Got a bad setup going. I was just saying for the GitHub repository module we looked at today, is that
Yeah.
something that you're using for your own org, like for your own project app already?
We are using it already with customers, but we have not yet rolled it out at Cloud Posse. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, that's fair, because I was wondering, like, surely a big challenge is importing all of your existing repositories over has got to be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the one hand, it's relatively easy, right? Because the GitHub APIs let you query all the repositories, you get all that information and so forth.
Right.
The issue comes down to if you already have a lot of rule sets and you already have a lot of things in place, you kind
Hmm.
of got to unwind that. And the issues that we discovered as well. One of the things I didn't mention is our component that we talked about for managing GitHub repositories supports imports. So it will attempt to import a repository given the settings that you provide there. And one of the challenges is, I believe, if there are environments that are defined on GitHub but aren't defined in your configuration,
Hmm.
I forget what happens. Maybe we fixed, maybe it was a bug that we fixed, but I know at one point the Terraform would crash out. Maybe now we fixed it so it just deletes the ones on GitHub, but I forget what the solution is. Anyways, yeah, to get parity, that's going to be a big deal. But the bigger thing is what you're going to realize is just how inconsistent things are, probably. And
Absolutely.
this will standardize it.
I started off with my own little personal org project just to see what it looks like from the other side. Only have like 4 or 5 repositories, and already running into headaches with like code QLs. Some repos have it, others don't, and things like like contributing guidelines and all the health metrics that you're supposed to have in all the repositories to make it community friendly.
Yeah.
Very quick You lose sight of how hard that is to do and maintain consistently.
Bear in mind, many of them you can put in your .github
Yeah.
special purpose config repo. Yeah, you've seen that one before, but
I think you can put in a few different things, but like for example, pull request templates. I don't think we can do that in there, can we?
so I don't think that's one that it works with.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And also, I think I would learn from one of these office hours. There's the special GitHub internal one as well, which is only to show off to members of the org.
Yeah, that was something I only learned about very recently, was that there's that special README file as well. Another interesting thing is if you stick a README in the .github folder
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have a README in the root of your repository,
Then it will show up here.
then it will show up here below. And that's something we've considered doing because our README is generated from the readme.yaml. And what happens is people like edit the readme.md, but they're supposed to edit the readme.yaml, which generates the MD.
Gotcha. Just out of curiosity, do you happen to get a bunch of contributors with one-liners, adding a punctuation mark here and there, just to get their name on the contributors list?
Well, apparently not. We have 56.
Oh.
But I know what you mean. You know, for a while it's been a problem. Sometimes we've seen some of those things go by, but hasn't really affected us too badly.
Gotcha. It's always during those hackathons where anything for a t-shirt.
Yeah, when is that? Is it Hacktober or when it's
Yeah, I think it's around October. It has to be. Although you're right, I think even GitHub have tried to clamp down on that a lot more, where they have some automated quality gates to check for what you're doing.
Dude, this year I think it's going to be what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to be gloves off in terms of
Oh, no.
with AI, Claude,
Yep.
Codex.
Jeez.
Top contributions, 250,000 contributions.
And the guy is in thousands of dollars in debt to Anthropic. Worth it. Got the free t-shirt though.
Yeah. Or maybe using the GitHub models as you were describing.
There you go.
Free now. All right. Any other questions today from anyone? All right. Well, let's pause there and we will come back to office hours next week. Same time, same place. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my bearings here on my Windows. Gee whiz. All right. So if you haven't already subscribed, go to youtube.com/cloudposse. That's where you'll find our YouTube channel. This video will be posted there in a few hours. We'll be sharing the links of today's session in the Slack channel, as well as we post the links at the bottom of the video. So if there was something here you want to follow up on, read more about, we'll share those links in a little bit. If you are interested in getting more help from Cloud Posse, maybe you use some of our modules, maybe you are starting a new venture from scratch, we have a reference architecture that's really awesome and can get you up and running in roughly 2 weeks. We've seen people get it up in just a few days or even just a day. But that is the fastest way to production-ready infrastructure. Go to cloudposse.com to learn more. And if you just want help with our open source, we do provide different support options there as well. If you want to get more involved in our community with lots of ways to get engaged, first join our Slack community, cloudposse.com/Slack, then register for these weekly office hours, and we'll see you around. Have a great rest of your week. Talk to you soon.